Okay.
I call this meeting to order. First thing on the agenda is review and approve minutes of March 9th meeting. All in favor? Charlotte?
Yeah.
And what's your first name?
Jean.
Jean. We don't have to.
What's that? No, you don't have to go around because nobody's remote.
Margaret isn't attending.
Okay.
So it's just us.
I think we should stop and do introductions of board members first, if we could,
Okay.
please.
My name is John Ames. I'm the chairman of the planning board. Chuck Mayer.
Charlotte Curtis, I'm the secretary.
And Jean.
Jean Lancaster.
Sure.
Sure.
Jeff McGowan, the manager for waste management, Norridgewock.
I'm sure the Kennedy District Engineer.
Darren Spears, I'm with Woodard and Curran, and we are the engineers for.
Lindsay Dana, Waste Management for the next recycling group. Derek Herbert, Operations Manager, Waste Management. Amy Ecker with Waste Management's Organics Recycling Group.
Nominee Wendy Dion, we own 41 Creditors Corner.
I take it that's your beautiful wife.
Yeah.
And I know that guy back there.
Okay, I was couldn't post me by you.
And can we go to the screen, please? Mark?
Hey, Mark Bauer, Jensen Baird, Town Attorney.
Thank you, Julia.
Good evening, Juliet Brown, zooming in from Portland, Maine, Council for Waste Management. Nice to see you all.
Thank you.
We'll open up for discussion action on site plan review application for Maine Regional Conversion Facility LLC. Proposing a biosolids processing facility at 357 Mercer Road and map 14 lot 9.
The first item of business under this matter related to the planning board is you formally accepting it and determining the application to be complete. You have the recommendation of the code enforcement officer in writing, actually that went to the chair, but he has determined that the application is complete. So that would require a motion to accept the application, determine it to be complete.
I just had a question about the septic system permit. Is that an issue?
No, they have not issued the permit yet. That would be a contingency for approval. Or condition of approval rather, or they could do that before they give approval. They have internal plumbing that they'll need as well as permits that they're holding.
I spent 2 hours going through this last night. And it looked like it was pretty complete to me.
Is that a motion?
I have a question. Is the lease ready?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay. Do we have a copy of it?
We can get you a copy.
Okay. Yes, I will make a motion that this application is complete.
One second.
All in favor?
And so that takes care of that. That now formally puts them before the planning board. And I recommend we turn it over to the applicant to provide the board and the public with the project overview.
Okay. I'm sorry, it's up to John to say.
online folks, I'm gonna screen share the presentation that's been provided by the app.
So, good evening and thank you. We've had introductions. I think the only person I don't know yet is Gene, so I'm sorry for that. This is my 31st year here. We have a new project with some folks to present to you tonight. Sherwood and I have the local management team along with Eric Furbush, who lives here in the community as well and is our operations manager. And thank you for allowing us the opportunity, and turn that over to Jane. Okay.
Thank you for the mouse.
Support you.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right, and
Sorry.
You have select board.
okay.
Yeah, that's. I'll change it.
All right, well, thank you all for this opportunity to present the project directly to the planning board. Again, I'm Jamie Ecker. I work for Waste Management Corporate Organics team. Even though I'm based technically out of Houston, I live here in Maine, where I've been for 40 years. So I'm pretty excited to present this project. With me, Lindsay Deanna, as was introduced before, he's one of the other members of the team. Just our roles is to help our areas and our local operations develop new organic waste recycling and disposal operations. So tonight, we'll try to keep this outline and presentation brief. We wanted to give you an overview of the project and why we're doing it, why we propose to do it, touch on the technology, show you a little bit about the facility design and show you how it works. And then, of course, touch on odor, traffic, and noise, and open it up for questions that you may have. I guess I have total control of the mouse. Oops. So the project rationale, as many of you may know, Crossroads is permitted today to take municipal sludge, biosolids, for disposal at the landfill. And Maine DEP recommends that landfill disposal be the preferred management method for that material, especially given what's occurred over the past few years. Back in 2018, prior to some of the changes in Maine rules regarding the land application of biosolids, well before that, Waste Management on its own voluntarily limited the amount of sludge handled into its landfills across the country. This was not for any compliance or regulatory reason. It was just our own internal controls not to have too much wet waste in our landfills for stability and protection of the asset. So prior to 2018, when we put that control at Crossroads, we used to handle up to north of 300 tons per day municipal sludge for disposal. Since we put those internal controls in place in 2018, we've averaged about 75 tons per day in the last 4 years or so. So quite a dramatic drop, all because we wanted to lower the amount we brought into the landfill for our own reasons. Through some research and the need in the state to find some disposal solutions for sludge, we started looking at different ways we could handle some of this. And the obvious way was to dry it. If we could dry the material, we could safely handle it more efficiently in our landfill. So we conceived this idea of the project, a drying facility at Crossroads, as a solution to help local wastewater plants. Next slide here. Going backwards. Okay, so the proposed facility is a very simple approach. All we're trying to do is dry the material for more efficient disposal in our secure landfill. Overview of what we're proposing: the facility is designed to handle 200, as they call it, wet tons, as is tons over the scale, inbound and dry that material to reduce the water content from 75% down to less than 30%. And once you go through that process, that 200 tons would turn into 50 tons of dry material. So it would go from that jello-like material to a dry material like you see in the picture. This would make it much easier for us to landfill the material. We propose to use state-of-the-art technology that's very energy efficient, which we're pretty excited about. We'll tell you about in a moment. All of the storage and processing of the materials would be in an enclosed building with engineered odor control. And that 150 tons of water that comes out would be piped to a tank, and we would treat that material for PFAS if necessary before transporting it offsite to wastewater plants, those same plants that we brought the sludge from. So a pretty simple concept. We assembled a project team for this. Obviously, we're the owner and we'll be the operator. Woodard & Kern is providing our primary engineering support and helping us with permitting. Odor Science and Engineering, an expert in odor science and engineering, is providing some engineering support. Sewell Company from Portland has done a traffic impact review. Verrill, formerly Verrill Dana, is providing permitting support. Sheridan Construction out of Fairfield would be our general contractor, and IEC Electrical out of Strong Main would be our electrical contractor. You'll understand in a moment why I bring them into the picture, why the electrician is on the slide. And then Shinse USA would provide the drying equipment. The permits required, obviously, we need a site plan permit from the town here, and we recognize we need a sanitary wastewater disposal permit for that holding tank for sanitary waste from the washrooms. We also need some permits from the Maine DEP. We will need a Chapter 409 solid waste processing facility license. And we will also need air emissions licenses from chapters 140 and 115. I'll point out that odor is regulated under Chapter 409. Maine has some very strict odor regulations related to these kind of processing facilities, and that would be covered there. The Chapter 140 and 115 will do a review to see if there's any other aspects from this proposed facility that may affect the landfill's current air emissions license. And we're also going to have a small generator just for safety reasons to have lights on and safety equipment in the event that we have an outage.
So you don't have either of these permits yet?
Oh, no, a great point. We will be, we wanted to first start the town permit. We plan to apply for the state permits in late August. We have had a pre-application meeting with the DEP back a few weeks ago, but we won't, those permits are not submitted yet, those applications.
Okay.
So technology overview. So a little bit about sludge drying. Sludge drying has been around for many decades in the US. There's many successful operating sludge dryers since the 1980s, still operating today in the US and actually around the world. The technology has evolved, and we've kept up with the evolutions of that. And a particular technology in this situation seemed most applicable. And that is the Shinse low temperature belt type dryer. And I'll show you a little diagram of it in a moment, show you how it works. And this is starting to catch on quite a bit in the US. There's hundreds of installations worldwide doing much more tonnage than we propose. But installations in the US, there's already one in Arizona, Vermont, Wisconsin, and there's more planned of this kind of dryer. The reason why it's catching on is it's extremely energy efficient. It's an electric heat pump design that uses a third of the energy of conventional drying. It operates at a relatively low temperature. Conventional dryers may operate up to 700 degrees Fahrenheit. This operates at about 165 degrees Fahrenheit, not that hotter than your clothes dryer. And slow speed, that temperature and the slow speed of the belt minimizes any dust or safety concerns related to the dust. And then finally, there's no airstream to treat. This is really a unique aspect of this. And you'll see again in this diagram, I'll show in a moment, but the design recirculates the air within the dryer and the water is removed by condensing using the heat pump. So there is no air emissions stream from the dryer. And then something that I personally am very excited about, some sustainability aspects to this. The electrical energy source for this dryer is going to come from the existing waste management renewable energy facility right now that takes the landfill gas and generates 3.2 megawatts of power. Yeah. And that electricity that goes on the grid, we plan to use between 50 and 60% of that. So it's really a great story that sludge that we've dried and still has organic matter that's going to go in the landfill will generate the biogas to fuel the gas to energy plant, and the electricity will dry the sludge. So pretty good story there. How this works, I'm going to use the mouse here. First, I'll talk about how sludge moves through the equipment. So there'll be 3 dryers, and we'll show you a layout of the facility in just a moment, but they're each identical. It's a fully enclosed box, if you will, like you see on the right here. But sludge is conveyed from our receiving and storage area, conveyed into an opening at the top of the dryer. These dryers are approximately 10 feet wide, 100 feet long, about 8 to 9 feet high. And like I said, except for the opening coming in, it's fully enclosed. And the material gets spread out on the perforated belt and slowly moves over the course of 3 hours down one way and drops down to the bottom belt and back to the beginning where it comes out as the dried material. Now the airflow, this is what's the unique aspect of this. This is also within this box. The hot side of the heat pump, the compression side, heats up the air, and that air is blown through the belts. The belts are perforated, and that air picks up the moisture. It soaks up the moisture, and that warm, wet air goes, it's a little cooler now, goes back to the cool side of the heat pump where it condenses out. The water then comes out. Like a cold drink of ice cubes on a hot, humid day, it drops out and that collects the condensate. So it's a contained circular loop for the airstream. Oops, sorry.
On that, you got the air blowing through it, the warm air blowing through it. But where the product is coming in is still open, right?
Yes, so great point. So there's openings at that one end for that material to get in there, and there's an opening below for the material to get out. There are some baffles, but the air just doesn't blow right out of there. There will be I'll say right now, this is in the enclosed building in the processing room, and there will be odor control in that room for that fugitive odor. It's going to smell in that room, but it's not like that entire airstream like conventional dryers. All the air that goes through material has to be treated. Here, we're recycling that air.
So you're going to basically, any air leakage coming out of the entrance and the exit will be recycled inside the building.
No, there'll be minimal air coming out of those 2 openings. I could probably best show you in a video, but it will smell in that room. I'm certain of it. It just won't be 10,000 cubic feet per minute of air blasting through there. So now to jump onto the 30% design, which is the level that's required for permit applications like this, and that is required for the DEP applications that we hope to submit in August. For those of you that aren't oriented to landfill, aerial shot Route 2 down here. This is our private road up here. Goes up to the existing landfill. The landfill gas to energy plant is up there. Over here outlined in yellow, if you can see it, is the new phase 14 expansion, which will be online shortly. And over here is the existing leachate storage and transfer tanks. We propose putting the new biosolids facility at the site of the former tire processing facility that closed a little over a year ago. So it's deep within our site. Oops. So here's a little closer shot. We outlined simply the building, the condensate storage tank, superimposed it on an old aerial photograph of the tire processing facility. So that's why you see that in the background. That stuff isn't there. So as you can see, that area was permitted and ran for 20 years under the same kind of license, a Chapter 409 solid waste processing license. So it's already kind of cleared that hurdle. We have to get a new license, but the area was a licensed solid waste processing area. No clearing is required for us to do this development. There's no new impervious area. We're going to use the existing already established stormwater management system. It's very well buffered, this site. It's at the internal entrance to the new phase 14 landfill. Here's the main roadway through the facility, but here is the entrance to the phase 14 landfill. It goes right through here. So we're on the way to the landfill. It's well buffered, 2,200 feet from the nearest resident. Significant buffers to all wetlands, and it's not near any wetlands of significance or other sensitive areas. And we will engineer in protections to make sure any sludge receiving activities are undercover and have containment to catch spills to be able to put that material in the building. This just gives you another view of this, an engineering view of it. You can see how we would build this out. Again, we're not developing any new area that wasn't already developed. The building is approximately 18,000 square feet of building. And I've got a better view of this in a second, but I wanted to show you trucks will come in. They will pull over here. They will back in. This area that looks a little whiter, that's actually a canopy. And they will back up to doors to empty into the building. They'll empty over a curb. The building floor for the sludge storage building will be about 8 feet below the curb. So the loads will slide off into the building. Also point out here, this area over here is where the product comes out of the building. This is the processing building right here. I'll give you a better view of this in a moment. But this is where the product comes out. Again, that'd be a canopied building, not fully enclosed, but that dry product will be taken directly to the landfill working face. So it's just kind of taking a stop here for a little while before it goes on its way. I'll also point out here, it's engineered to get good circulation around the building for emergency access, fire trucks, etc. And point out the blue there is the condensate storage tank. Here's a general arrangement showing the building a little closer. I'll call it a floor plan. This shows you the area that trucks would back into up to these doors. Those doors would remain closed, except when we're accepting loads. They back up tires to the curb, tip into the biosolid storage building. This is one big building, but it's two separate areas. Okay, so this is the biosolid storage building. These are hoppers that'll feed the dryers. There's a hopper for each dryer, so it's 3 independent trains. But this building, our analysis shows, our testing shows, this is where the majority of the odor potential could be from, in that sludge storage building. So that is going to be kept separate from the other building and will be ventilated at the rate of 4 air changes per hour to an odor control system. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. Here's the dried product transfer area right over here. We have an electrical mechanical room over in this area, and then there's an office break maintenance area with an odor control system will be on the roof of that building to service both this area and this area. So to talk a little bit about odor and traffic and noise and some of the protections we put in place. Odor control, two primary potential sources, biosolids transport in the trucks. And we're expecting 8 to 10 trucks per day, which is far less than we used to take prior to 2018 of the same material. And the trucks are going to be required to follow our transporter rules and requirements and existing license requirements. So these kind of trucks have to have sealed tailgates, have to be covered. They need to follow not just the DOT rules, but also our rules. For the processing facility, you know, our first line of defense, of course, is it's well buffered and protected location, but we're certainly not relying on that at all. We're going to follow a contain and treat strategy for the storage and processing buildings. They'll be fully enclosed under negative pressure. So we're always pulling air into the building to go to the active odor control system. And in designing the odor control system, we determined it was best to get accurate source data from actual sludge storage areas and from a similar drying facility for the processing room, as you were talking about before. And the odor levels are much higher in the sludge storage area than the processing room, was confirmed there. But we wanted that data to do our modeling, to do our odor modeling. Woodard & Curran has specialists on their staff that did detailed modeling. It takes into account atmospheric conditions, topography, the roofs, where we put stacks, all kinds of things. Getting your newspaper right now, huh, Richard?
With this negative draft system in the building, you have an exhaust somewhere.
Yes.
What is the exhaust filtered at?
Just going there right now. You may have a follow-on question, but yes, negative air, make sure that air doesn't escape from the building. It's always being drawn in. There'll be sized engineered louvers to draw air in. And the the fan exhaust system will be oversized to make sure it's always drawing air through the building. Okay. We looked at many different kinds of odor control systems, and in the end, the modeling indicated that technology called ionization plus high velocity dispersion, which is basically high velocity dilution of post ionization, easily meets Maine's Chapter 409 regulations, which are very strict not to have basically odor at a property line. Hope that begins to answer your question. We can probably talk more about that if you'd like.
Yeah, I get more questions on
Okay.
that.
Yeah, I think Woodard & Curran can provide some answers there as well. Traffic. So the proposed facility, again, it's going to be 8 to 10 trucks per day. It'll generate 4 to 6 tanker trucks of condensate going off-site back to wastewater plants for disposal. And there's an estimated 10 trips related to employees and vendor deliveries. So that full traffic impact study was completed last month by Sewell Company. It included all landfill related traffic, not just our proposed new facility, but everything that comes in and out of our road. And the major findings out of that, it takes up quite a bit of the application that's in front of you, but the major findings out of that were that the facility will generate about 18 new one-way trips during peak hours. But this is less traffic than the former tire processing facility generated. That had significantly more. It also found that there are no level of service concerns at Route 2 in the site entrance. It meets DOT's highest standard, level of service A, during both the peak morning and afternoon hours. And then finally, it found that Route 2 has the capacity to accommodate the trips generated by the proposed new facility. So pretty solid study. With respect to noise, again, facility location works in our favor on purpose to have it more towards the center of the site. There'll be noise from trucks and a loading equipment, but it'll be similar to the noise generated by the existing operations of the landfill, and it's limited to normal working hours. Processing equipment in the building, conveyances and drying equipment are fully enclosed and in an insulated building. And this equipment does not make a lot of noise. The largest potential odor source in our analysis was the odor control equipment outside the building, the fans that run 24/7. The analysis on that using the data provided by the supplier of the equipment was the noise would be expected to be about 38 decibels at 360 feet from the facility. And why do we put 360 feet? Because that's again, this is requirements we have to do for DEP, all this modeling. That's the nearest property line, but that's a property line that's landlocked. So the far lower levels, lower than 30 decibels at other property lines, the next nearest occupied property lines. For comparison, 40 decibels is considered the sound of a quiet library. So this particular kind of setup that we're using is common at not only in wastewater treatment plant settings, but it's also used in urban areas at labs at universities and academic settings and other situations like that. And that's one of the reasons is it's pretty quiet. So again, it's expected to be significantly less than the former tire processing facility that was not enclosed. And at that, I probably ran just over my 20 minutes, but I got a couple questions.
My biggest concern is the dust particles to this, because you're going to get dust particles. That's just given. And these possibly could be PFAS type stuff. Getting it, where you're using an exhaust fan to create your negative draft, all that kind of stuff inside the building. The last thing I want to see is the land around it gets covered in PFAS.
Yeah. Yeah, so remember I said that the area that's going to be very aggressively ventilated is the wet sludge holding area. Okay, so that's wet sludge. The area of the dryer, again, one of the reasons to picking this dryer is the relatively low air movement out of the dryer. And it's slow, and 3 hours in that dryer, and it's at a low temperature, and the air doesn't go through it aggressively. So I think the opportunity to have lots of dust flying all over the place in these enclosed buildings is going to be, or outside those buildings, is going to be pretty minimal.
Your exhaust fans and things like that, are you going to be filtering the air through that?
Good question. I don't know if we've considered putting filters on of some kind.
I know when I worked in an IBM plant, they filtered the air, the exhaust and the intake air to like 3 microns, which is a pretty smaller smoke.
Yeah.
I know but usually don't they use like a sludge press for a lot of this kind of stuff?
Sludge press.
Yeah.
It's if you're referring, they do that at the wastewater treatment plants to make the sludge out of the liquid sludge. They go from liquid and they press it to get it up to the 75% water content from 5 or 4.
But I know one of the sewer trash incinerators, they pressed all their sludge coming out of the trash incinerator, all the other. And I was just wondering if that was more of a feasible low dust type environment, but it may not dry it as much.
Yeah. It depends on the sludge, but generally we can't get it as dry as we're trying to get it. And by the way, we're not drying this to dust.
Right.
That's why specifically we're saying, yeah, it's still gonna have some moisture, but a much easier to handle at the landfill. We're taking out, 3/4 of that water that was in there is out. So. But it's still gonna be moist.
And there'll be some moisture escaping into the air out of these dryers,
Outside
the dryer units themselves?
outside the building,
No, not so much on the,
within the building,
yes,
there could be some, yeah. But again, that air in that building is also gonna be odor controlled. It's not gonna be quite as aggressive a system because the odor potential in there is not as great. So, that's why, even though it's one long building, 175 feet long, that 65 feet to start with is kept separate. The sludge area from the processing area, there'll be a wall there.
is there questions from anybody else?
I asked my questions earlier.
Do you have any more?
To present. Yeah, there was one slide, we called it the parking lot, just if people wanted to get an idea of the actual levels we historically took before we put in those our voluntary measures to stop taking so much wet waste. Again, that was purely our decision. It wasn't a regulatory decision or a compliance issue. But you can see that we were taking on average, say 150 tons average prior to 2018, but peak days, up north of 350, but commonly around 300 tons a day. And then after we put in place those internal controls, you can see how it dropped off dramatically.
I have a question in the plans that it said that you would still be taking some wet sludge directly to the landfill.
Yes.
Why would that be?
So a couple reasons. One is, and this is maybe one of the great reasons to have it cited there. We already take wet sludge today. We're going to build this. We want to have it full. Oops, sorry. Want it back? Yeah. So we'll never get exactly 200 tons a day, right? So there'll always be some amount that may be overshot that could go there. Also, if we have scheduled or unscheduled maintenance, we can go to the landfill because we know we can do it. We did it before and we do it today. So it's really a great backup right there on the property to underpin the facility.
I want to leave you exposed, but we do have members of the public that came tonight, so courtesy to them. Did you folks have any questions about the presentation?
I was just curious about where the sludge was coming from, and since that plant is within an area that's already there, we were notified that it's going to be butting up against 2 acres of our property. I'm not sure how that works. I'm not sure the edges of our property. We've never walked the property.
Yeah, maybe you want to go back to the overview.
I believe they're on Frederick's Corner Road and
Yeah.
you're considered an abutter to the overall facility,
Okay,
not necessarily an abutter to this project, if that
not
makes
the building itself.
clear sense.
Okay, now it makes sense. I'm like, it doesn't make sense once you build a ditch. That's not in my house.
No. Actually, it gets further away from you
Oh, okay.
compared to where we are today.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure.
By, I think probably
Yeah,
half a mile.
yeah.
And oh, the text map.
Highlighted in yellow.
Yeah.
Yep.
And our property is on the backside, is the stream is there. So when you guys said water and waste and all that, I'm not concerned about the stream, but you said you covered that. With your EPA.
So this is your property here. That's the proposed site right there. And
Yeah, that's not even near us. Oh, okay.
you're looking at 2,500 feet. to the
I'm like,
border.
why do we get a letter?
I think it just, you fall under what's called an abutter to the facility,
Oh,
and for those reasons, we are required to submit.
like, don't mess with my stream. We haven't even traveled to the other side of our property, it's too far to walk, and the stream's in the way, so we don't get over the stream there. Yeah, and so the traffic was my other concern, it's not too bad now, but you said it would be increasing, and it'd be coming from downtown Norridgewock area.
It likely would come from the interstate in on 139.
Oh, it's gonna come down that way too.
And, yeah, we actually discourage folks from traveling in 27 and 2.
Yeah,
And then we more than discourage, we don't allow any of them. For some, and I can't answer the question, but sometimes truck drivers like to come by the ponds and see the summer traffic along Smithfield, and we've always worked with the Smithfield, yes, Smithfield Town Office to keep them up. Is it 137?
yeah,
And occasionally a truck might go that way, and we meet the truck driver very quickly because we have a direct communication with Nikki in the Smithfield Town Office, and she calls me if somebody, and we keep them on. But
yeah,
the preferred method is to come up the interstate.
yeah.
Our goal, I think one of your questions was, where is it coming from? Our goal is to manage waste within the state of Maine first. We take very little out of state waste now. It typically is run 18 to 25% max. Present sludge intake is about 75 tons a day. And when they said internal controls, these weren't controls here at our facility. These were controls through the corporation that they made system-wide or around the country. We've never had any real trouble managing sludge, but we have to follow the rules of the corporate directives, and we minimize. But first and foremost, we see a problem. Well, there is a problem in Maine with sludge.
Right.
Right now, a lot of sludge, because of PFAS challenges, is going to Canada. And another great amount goes to the state-owned landfill in Juniper Ridge in Old Town. But we are a very small manager of sludge, and really always have been.
Yeah.
We're looking, PFAS has come up today. You will see that our company locally is going to be permitting a PFAS treatment facility at our right at the landfill, so that our leachate gets treated to the standards recommended by the state and EPA, so that we are within standard, I guess. And we're one of the only facilities I'm aware of in Maine that is presently pursuing PFAS treatment, because
One of the first in the country.
yeah, at the end of the day, we need to have a place to properly manage our leachate that's
Yeah.
comes from the trash and rainfall and what have you. And right now, all of our leachate goes to Anson Madison Treatment Facility. We have kind of a partnering arrangement with them. We're actually have helped fund studies over there for PFAS treatment. And we think that by the end of 2024, all goes well, we will have a full PFAS treatment facility online at our facility, and be probably the first in the state.
I just want to make a quick joke about your drying unit, and it's just like the pizza oven.
Yeah,
I've heard the guys keep it down.
I was driving our toaster, you know.
Exactly the same. You must have been in the pizza oven room.
Yeah.
Yes. Somebody thought of it. That's a good idea, though, to dry it up.
Yeah, that's what we think.
And we think the energy part of it really helps with the facility that we already have online that is shipping energy off through the grid that we can manage locally or utilize locally.
Yeah, it's really, it's a great project for the state. Given the challenges, Maine is the only state that has banned land application of sludge. No matter what you think about that, it is only the only one, so it's caused a real challenge for Maine wastewater treatment plants.
Mhm.
And having to ship them that material far away is it has an impact on Maine communities.
Mhm.
On the ratepayers and eventually the taxpayers in those communities. So it's important that everyone work on solutions.
Yeah, it looks like a good one, actually.
Well, I'm confident,
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
thanks.
Is there anybody else with questions, comments?
No comment. Does it, by the ag, Maine was the future needs to address that at all.
Yes. Yeah, there have been other states, and Lindsay could tell you a lot about it, but different states have taken different approaches. But Maine is the only one that has an outright ban on any sewage sludge beneficial use. There may be others coming down the pike. Yeah.
No other questions, comments, concerns from those in the room?
I have a question. Do you guys do any PFAS testing on your site? You know, for residual stuff that,
Leachate. We're required to test our leachate. We do.
what about the ground around there?
Ground around.
Around your facility, you know, any dust that gets on a windy day or something like that?
I'm just caution that we don't want to get outside the scope of the application.
Right.
Maybe that's a better one-on-one conversation.
How about, is there planning any PFAS testing around this building?
No. There's no reason to at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, it's all the floods.
It's included, but there's an exhaust to the thing.
Fair question.
It's a fair question. I can tell you the research is pretty strong that the PFAS stays with the sludge. And there's some really good data showing that. So I think it's highly unlikely that it's going to just volatilize on its own. The data that is out there is on the material when it's wet and when it's dry, and you don't lose it through the drying process. That's why we specifically did testing at a facility that was using the same kind of technology, this gentle belt dryer, slow, low temperature, to see if we lost any in any regard. So it looks pretty convincing. It's staying with the solids.
Off scope, but there's a lot of PFAS in this room.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. If we could,
We're gonna need a long time to solve all that, but.
yeah, if I could just say one other thing, we don't make PFAS.
No.
We don't make it. It
No,
comes from.
You're gonna be the ones taking care of it.
It comes from all of us. We're all using things that have PFAS in them in our households, and that waste or that sludge, those wastewater plants, they're receivers of the PFAS. So PFAS levels have been going down in wastewater treatment plant sludge since there's been so much attention to it, and some were banned a number of years ago. But it doesn't minimize the concern. It's a good trend that's going on, but we don't create it.
Hopefully, we're showing that we're getting out ahead of the
Yeah.
problem and helping make change to it. That's the.
Yeah.
hope.
And providing a secure home for it in the landfill.
Council, are you all set?
I just had one quick question. There was reference made earlier to needing to amend the DEP air license in addition to getting a solid waste processing license. And I was just curious if you could explain the basis or why the air license is being required if there's no new airstream coming out of the processing facility. That was my only real question was that I think there are two permits that are at the state level that you need to either get amended or get new ones up. I think one was the waste processing facility and the other was the air license. So it was the second one I was wondering about.
Yeah, so there's still a little bit of work to be done, I'll be honest with you, on what level of license there, but the fact that the entire complex has a Title V license has us having to do that analysis. So we're anticipating that we may have to modify that license. We don't think it's going to be arduous to do so, but we have a little bit more work to do there.
Okay, so it's more the fact that it's currently licensed and you're making some modification to the existing plant that requires that license to be amended. Is that
Yeah, I think
yeah.
Juliet might be better at answering this, but my understanding is any new activity on this site has to be analyzed under that, the umbrella permit for Crossroads.
Yeah, this is Juliet. I mean, basically, you have to update the license to reflect any changes at the facility. And you know, I think we're still doing the analysis, whether there's any emissions that would be reflected in that license, or whether they're just insignificant under the definition of insignificant. But you basically have to update the license to reflect the change in the facility.
okay? Yeah, the main reason I was asking is because one of the site plan review criteria deals with air quality, and I just wanted to see if the board should be paying attention to what the state will be looking at in terms of the air license. That's more the genesis of the question. That's it. That's all I had.
There's no other question, comment, concerns from the board. The next item for your consideration with regards to this application will be determination of escrow requirement. The ordinance allows you to require an escrow of $1,000 per application to cover miscellaneous fees, whether it's consultants to help navigate through costs directly associated with it, like mailings, things like that. Excuse me. The applicant voluntarily submitted the initial escrow of $1,000. But that still requires a vote of the planning board to require an escrow as a matter of the record. My further recommendation would be to ask the applicant to voluntarily deposit $10,000 into escrow to cover costs throughout the course of this hearing process to streamline things from an administrative end on the town. That would cover the mailings, newspaper ads that are required, as well as council.
So I will make a motion that we will require or ask.
To require the escrow of 1,000, but to ask for 10.
Okay. To require an escrow of 1,000, which I understand you've already done. But to submit $10,000 in an escrow account.
I second it.
They're gonna get it back and they're gonna lose all of it.
Yes.
I'm. All in favor?
Those opposed? Two, the motion fails.
Huh?
Didn't you just oppose it?
No.
Or you were just late to the game?
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Okay, I missed that. I
I'm
will,
old and I'm slow. Give me a break.
What's that?
I'll issue a letter to that effect.
Okay, great, thank you.
The next item here today would be to determine whether or not the board would like to hold a public hearing on the application. Customarily with a project of this scale, and the commercial aspect of it, the large commercial aspect of it, the board has in the past, but that is your pleasure. So that requires a motion to set a public hearing, whether you vote in favor or against.
All of the abutters been notified
Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
by regular mail?
No,
The town did it.
if I'm certified.
Yeah.
They have.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if we need more than that.
There could be people on the outside that want their questions answered. I mean, because we're talking the whole town dispatch basically nothing.
They have not.
But I make a motion that we actually set a public hearing between now and the next planning board meeting.
Is that time enough?
Yes, I think I require 10 days notice.
Okay.
I think that they would have showed up, like, I think much.
I think one of the advantages of a traditional public hearing as opposed to just a notice of application is that it goes in the paper, it's a little bit more widely broadcast. Involves total community instead of just your direct landing butters.
Anyone second the motion?
Second that motion.
All in favor?
Mhm.
3-1. Yeah, you,
Okay. I'm looking down here, so I can't see what was.
All right, so we will hold a public hearing between now and the next meeting. Is the board amicable to the 27th? At 6 o'clock, Thursday, the 27th at 6 o'clock, it's 2 weeks away. Any objection?
no,
No, sounds good to me.
We will set that date, July
Here?
20th, yes, July 27th at 6 p.m. at the town office. Abutters will get notice of that, and there will be a notice in the Morning Sentinel published twice before the,
You're gonna know from them all certified mail again.
yes. That's the process, the applicant is aware of the process, and through this attorney too.
So that was all in favor of that motion.
there was three in favor and Chucky voted,
You don't want to have a public hearing?
all opposed.
Yeah, I told you. I mean, they got a certified letter for this one, you were late.
Everybody good so far? I think that's gonna conclude most of handling with the application tonight, unless the board has any other questions. For the purpose of proceedings and efficiency, I think at the next meeting, the 6 o'clock, we'll hold a public hearing. And we'll also slot on the agenda after the public hearing to start your review of the application.
Okay.
And then that allows you to go back and forth on the items for the review criteria and then allow them to follow up. For anything that you might need that's missing or not. One other note outside of that special meeting on the 27th is the second Thursday in August. I'm not here. I don't know if you want to hold that meeting or if you want to push it to the next Thursday. Board have pleasure.
I rely on you way too much, so I
No,
want
we're
to
trying to have any business.
move it.
You will have business at that meeting in August because the applicant will still be before you.
Yeah.
Whether it's the process of reviewing the application or voting on decision or findings of facts or anything like that. Okay, so if we could have a motion from the board to change the August 10th meeting to August 17th.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
I'll be agreeable this time. Yes, sir.
You seconded,
Yeah.
all in favor? 4-0.
August 17th.
On to public comment, any public comment not related to items on the agenda this evening? Board have any other business? A member of the public have any other business? Any time, we need a motion to adjourn.
So.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Any discussion? All those in favor of adjournment? That's unanimous, meeting will be adjourned at 6:58.
Thank you.
Council, thank you.
All right, have a good evening.
Yeah.